Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Newton Communities Farms, where we go live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1 p.m. And for those of you who don't remember, my name is Jay Villar, and I am the Communications, Operations, and Events Manager here at Newton Community Farm. And I'm also a nutritional therapist that teaches people how to heal and optimize their bodies using real food. So if you were able to catch last week's episode, what I did was I gave you a tour of my kitchen, and I let you know all the things that were available to prep for your family and for yourself. I also showed you varying recipes that you can make for yourself using either chicken or vegetable broth to be able to save it for either meals that you're going to be cooking that night or for future meals. And I also showed you some healthy snacks like nuts and apples and almond butters to have on hand for the times that you need to, just have something quick. And today I have very excited that I'm going to show you an actual recipe that you could use both for today as well as for the future. And that is a recipe on sauerkraut and a basic recipe on learning about fermentation. So a quick note is fermentation is the art of turning a food into a probiotic. And a fermented food is anything like sauerkraut that we're going to be making today, kimchi, which is a Korean dish, which is fermented cabbage, things like kombucha, which is a fermented tea. Beer is also a fermented food or drink. But the art of fermentation is really about how to preserve your food even longer and how to pull out more of the natural healing properties and good bacteria that are naturally in food and make it readily accessible for ourselves and for our bodies. So for those of you who have never fermented before in your life, learning about fermentation through the art of sauerkraut is a great beginner's step into what it actually takes to make a fermented food. So today, what the lesson is learning all about sauerkraut. So sauerkraut comes from fermented cabbage that I have here. I have two types. I have the green cabbage and I have the purple cabbage. And a quick history on sauerkraut. So sauerkraut is a German word meaning sour cabbage. And many people think that it originated from Germany. But however, there has been history that the Chinese were fermenting cabbage all the way to them discovering it as meals that they were making on building the Great Wall of China. And then it looked like it imported itself to Europe, and then the Germans picked it up and then transported here into the US. So what they discovered with sauerkraut was that it had these great properties that prevented scurvy. So they were able to take it on to these long trips with their boats, as it had the natural properties of vitamin C, and they're able to use it for the meals because it didn't necessarily need the refrigeration at the time. So another sort of tip is that sauerkraut holds for a very long time. Some people can say that it can last up to years, but I don't necessarily recommend that. So because it's so good, so you want to be able to eat it at least within a few months. So So once again, because we are live, we have the chat feature off to the side. So I would love to be as interactive as we possibly can with learning about sauerkraut together and the process. So what we're going to be doing is working through this together and showing you what you're going to need in your home. So the first thing, obviously, you'll need when you start making sauerkraut is a cabbage. If you are great enough to be part of New Community Farms CSA membership, or if you want to stop by our farm stand, cabbage is one of the crops that we grow on the farm. So you're able to get your cabbage there, and or you can also just buy it from the store if you want to make it more immediately. The second ingredient that you'll need for all your fermentations is salt. So I use natural sea salt, the fine kind, which is going to be very critical in making sure that your food actually becomes fermented. And then you'll need some basic kitchen tools. So you'll need a container that you will want to ferment your food in. So this is a food grade plastic container that will be able to ferment your food with. Now the trick is for your fermenting vessel, if you do end up using plastic, you want to make sure that it's BPA free and it's food grade. So what that means is that when you start fermenting your food, the fermentation process isn't going to pull the chemicals in the plastic itself, and it could just sort of stay there. If you do not have a chemical or BPA-free plastic container, you can simply use a glass container, like a large mason jar will also be appropriate for your fermentation. But because eventually I will be using both cabbages, I just need something large, so I'm using my container here. The third thing that you'll need is a kitchen scale. Now, why you want a kitchen scale is because it will give you the most accurate proportion when you are eating your food. So, in our for a cabbage recipe, it's about 2% salt per volume of cabbage. So when I cut my cabbage up, I'll be weighing it, and then I'll know how much salt I would need. And then the next thing you'll need is a bowl. So this is just a regular bowl, and we will use it to mix there. Now, a good question out there is, what if you don't have a kitchen scale? So if you don't have a kitchen scale, then you'll just simply need to know how much cabbage you'll actually have at the end of your cutting. So, one head of cabbage will produce between 1.5 to 2 pounds of actual volume there. So in that case, you'll need about 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of sea salt. So if you kind of use that as a ratio and a guess, to use about 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of sea salt per head of cabbage, then you should be sort of good there. So that's kind of just general rule of thumb. There is such a thing as undersalting and oversalting your cabbage, which is why you would eventually want to use a kitchen scale. But to keep it in that range of 1 cabbage equals 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of salt, we'll be able to use that as well. Another trick is when we eventually start to cut up our cabbage, you'll be able to see how much water is being released in your cabbage, and if you're not getting enough liquid from your water, then you will know that you don't have enough of salt in there. So you can always add a little bit of salt. Okay, so next we're going to do is I'm going to grab my very sharp knife and get that ready. And I'm going to purely peel off some of the big leaves here. We're going to need this for later. So just get a couple of your big leaves out there, and I'm going to see if I can move my little camera here just so you can see me. Here we go. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply, got another big leaf here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply cut this in half. And then I'm going to take the core out. So just be careful with your knife. And all you're going to do is create a triangle. Just get the core out right there. And for time's sake, I'm simply just going to use only half just to kind of show you what the example is. But eventually I will for myself, because I do have 2 cabbages. We'll be fermenting this entire thing and then just adding that to the recipe. So I'm going to put this off to the side. So you're just going to take your little knife and you're going to cut into slivers as finely as you possibly can make it. Now, for those of you who have like a mandolin, one of those like slicers, that's a good way to do it. But if you have time and you want to practice your knife skills, then simply using your sort of chef's knife and making as finely as cut as you possibly can. So what you're looking for is just very, very fine pieces of cabbage there. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this up as finely as I possibly can. And a trick for knife skills is if you kind of like choke your knife here. So as you see, I'm choking it, and then I'm just kind of going back and forth here. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm kind of just letting the knife do its work. And then I'm making a little claw with my hands and holding it and holding the cabbage. So I'm not cutting my fingertips off, and I kind of know where to stop. So again, just kind of this as finely as I possibly can make it. Now it doesn't have to be, perfect, but you just want it to be fine, because eventually we're going to be kind of getting as much of the natural juice in the cabbage out as we possibly can. And when it's finely chopped that way, it just helps with that process. So doing a little bit more of the upfront work will get it. So, that was half a cabbage. And you can see we kind of got a lot of our volume out of that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just turn on my little scale here. All right. And I'm going to put my bowl on top of my scale, and I'm just going to tare it. So tearing simply means it's going to balance out the bowl. So now it's at 0. And I'm going to put my cabbage in here. All right. So I have 539 grams. So if I wanted 2% volume of salt, I would need to times that by 0.02. So for those of you who are watching this live, I need you to let me know how much salt I need. So if I have, it's 541 grams of cabbage, and I need 2% salt. So how much salt am I looking to add into my cabbage? I will wait, do a little dance while I wait for the answer. So who is going to let me know how much salt I need? So once again, it's 2% salt, and it's 541 grams. Do 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 do. All right, so got from Barbara, 1 gram of salt. Is that accurate? I don't have my calculator. All right, I need to get a calculator. All right, hold on. 541 times 0.02. So actually, I need 541. Okay, so I need 10.8 grams of salt. So we're just gonna go up to 11. So Sue got that correct with 10.8. So if we have 541 plus 10.8, so I need about 551 grams. But I just zeroed out here, so I'm just going to go with all right. Got my, it was close to 11 grams that I got in here. So now I got the salt in there. And now what I'm doing is I am squeezing. So now this is where the fun part begins. As I squeeze, I'm breaking up the fibers of the cabbage, and the salt is helping me release the water into the bowl. And this is the most critical part of your fermentation process. Oh, somebody said had no idea how this is how you make sauerkraut. Yeah, this is exactly how you make sauerkraut. So if you never fermented anything before, as I mentioned, this is like the beginner's guide of sauerkraut, of fermentation. So all you needed were just 2 ingredients. You needed the sauerkraut, you needed the cabbage, and then you needed the salt in order for you to make sauerkraut. So if you have kids at home, this is actually like the fun part, where you just like start taking the sauerkraut or the cabbage and the salt, and you start squeezing. So let them squeeze, let them, play with their food, get their hands all in there. Obviously, make sure your hands are clean. I've been washing my hands a lot recently, as we all should and all do, but especially when you're cooking in the kitchen, you want to make sure that like your hands are clean, your utensils, your bowls that you're cooking with are clean, to make sure that no nasty pathogens that you're trying to avoid is not going into your food. So let me kind of just tell you a little bit about the benefits of sauerkraut. So sauerkraut, as I mentioned, is a natural probiotic. So what is a probiotic? So if we take the word probiotic, right? So pro equals 4, and biotic is life. So probiotic is for life. And why it's for life is because it has the natural good bacteria that our gut microbiome or gut flora needs. So we actually have more bacteria than we do human cells. So we're actually more bacteria than we are human, and the majority of our bacteria is found in and around our gut. So when we have a natural good species of bacteria that's healthy, that means we're healthy. And how do we get more of the good guys in our bodies? Is through things like probiotics. So things like sauerkraut, which is a natural probiotic. So how do we get those probiotics? So well, it pulls from the air. It pulls from the natural bacteria that's already in there. So bacteria is in and all around us. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to create an environment so that more of that good bacteria is available to live in and inside of us. Now, one of the things that that I do recommend, though, is if you have something like SIBO, so that's an overgrowth of the bacteria, then I probably wouldn't recommend having too much fermented foods or probiotic, because it just causes too much sort of gas and bloating up in the high digestive tract. So that's one thing that you want to be careful of. If you do have something like SIBO, then you don't want to have too much fermented foods. However, things like sauerkraut is if you do have digestive issues, especially like constipation, it's a natural way to kind of get things moving through you again. So, and then also things like vitamin B and vitamin C. So as I mentioned, like with scurvy, so like vitamin B is our sort of energy vitamin, and vitamin C and vitamin K2. What they do is they help to make sure that the calcium moves through the body naturally. So that's just another way to think about how cabbage and fermentation turning into sauerkraut kind of really helps our body. All right, so I've been kind of squeezing here now for quite some time, and now I can really feel the juices coming through my fingertips. Let me see if I can kind of show you here on the camera. So here, you can really see that juice kind of come through. So that's what you're looking for. You really want to squeeze it as much as you can, because you need that juice and that water to cover the majority of your sauerkraut in order for it to submerge, because you don't want any type of outside air to come in. Oop, I have like a big old piece here. Now, there are things that you can buy on the market to help with this process. You have like something called the kraut pounder, which kind of helps get this process down non-manually. But depending on your involvement with your food and how often you want to like ferment, I recommend starting with hand, just so you can kind of see how it feels and build this like natural relationship with your food. You see that? Look at that. That's pretty good. All right. All right. So this is only half a cabbage. And I'm going to be putting it into this container here, just as an example of what it's going to look like in a large container. But depending on how much you have, like this can easily fit into a smaller mason jar. But because I'm going to be using a lot more, I'm going to be putting it into this bigger container. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour everything that I can into my little vessel here that's going to do the fermentation work. And now I'm going to take my little wooden spoon. I'm going to pat this down as much as I possibly can. Put this in a place where it's submerged. I'm going to use my little spatula so I can get it down. Now, if your sauerkraut does not, use all tools today. Oh, there we go. That's better. So just really look for the instrument that really helps you. So this one, spatula with the wooden spoon, with the rubber, helps me kind of pat all of the water down, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. So what you're looking for is for the water to be above your sauerkraut. And remember where I said we're going to be using our little leaf here. So I'm just going to take a leaf and try to make a lid using the top part of the leaf. And then I'm just going to use my hand and press it all the way down. Pretty good. All right. Okay. All right. So then when you have it pressed all the way down, you just want to make sure that the water stays there. All right. And now you have your little lid. And you seal it. So this is my seal. Now there are a couple things here that you really want to, okay, why do you need a lid lift? Oh, okay, great point. Okay, so why do you need to put something on top of here? So you want to always make sure that the water stays above your sauerkraut. So this is just there's a couple of tricks that you can use to make sure that happens, and that there's no extra pathogens that are able to get in here. So making sure that the water is above is just one way to do it. So you don't actually need the leaf. As long as there's enough water, that is always going to be submerged on top of your sauerkraut. That's like one way. Another way is to get the leaf and press it down as another layer. That's another way. Another way is you can actually get a plate and put it into your vessel to weigh it down. That's another way. Or you can get like a plastic bag, fill it with water, and weigh it down. That's another way. So the whole point is just to make sure that the water remains above the sauerkraut. So this is just the way that I'm doing it. And it helps you kind of use your other tools that you were eventually going to just discard. So now that happened, there are a couple of things that you want to keep in mindful of your lid. So you for sure want to make sure that it's sealable and that there's nothing that's coming into your sauerkraut. Now what's going to occur is that your sauerkraut is going to start to ferment, and it's going to start creating a lactic acid. So the lactobacilla, which is the bacteria that it's being used, that's going to be turned into, is alive and it needs to breathe. So in order for it to breathe, it's called burping it. So burping it simply means by every 3 days, you want to just open the lid, release the gas, and put the lid back on. So there's a couple of tools that exist. I don't necessarily have it myself, but there's a natural fermentation lid that lets the gas escape on its own. If you don't have that, you can simply just open up the lid and close it every 3 days. And you're going to let this ferment from anywhere from 7 to 14 days in a warm, non-lit corner of your house. So obviously, if you're going to put it in your kitchen, you can put it off to the corner, which is fine. Or if you, I have another question. Okay, what happens if you don't burp it? Whew, okay, all right. So if you don't burp it, you're creating a lot of gas and a lot of pressure in your vessel. So it will eventually just like explode. So imagine like a soda pop, or like a beer, where if you like shake it up, and then you sort of open up the can, then like all of that sort of gas explodes. That's pretty much what sort of happens when you don't ferment your sauerkraut. Is like it's just going to sort of just explode on you. So you want to make sure that you just like release it and kind of like let it go. Now, as far as where you want to keep it, you can keep it on your kitchen counter, which is fine. Just make sure that it doesn't have any like direct light to it. If you have like a closet that is pretty clean, you can keep it. You can keep it there. You can keep it like in your cupboard for all you need. All right. Is this stinking when you open up the lid? So it is going to have like a vinegary kind of like smell to it. It's not gonna. It should not smell spoiled or anything like that. It just should have like a tangy smell to it. Technically, you can eat it at any time, including now. It's just not going to have any type of sauerkraut taste to it. It's just going to taste like salted cabbage at this point. So you want to be organized with it. So just get a piece of tape and that you can write on, and you just want to write 2 dates on it. You want to write the date that you made the sauerkraut. So today is 3/30, and you want to write the date in which you want to put it in the fridge and start using it. So I'm going to start to look at this in about 8 days. So I'm going to write 4/7 on there. All right. So I have another question here. It says, can you use Tupperware? So again, if you use Tupperware, you want to make sure that one is it's glass. So glass is just great across the board. Or if you do use plastic, you want to make sure that it's BPA free and it's food grade. So obviously Tupperware, you put food in there, but not all Tupperware is created equal. So if you're using something like the black Tupperware that comes in from like a Chinese or a Thai restaurant, I wouldn't recommend that. That's actually not really good plastic just in general. So you don't want to ferment in that. What you do not want is your plastic to be of poor quality, and then all of that fermentation and that bacteria is being pulled into that plastic, and then you're consuming it. So that's why you want really good sort of Tupperware or BPA free plastic. Okay, all right. So you have your sauerkraut here, kind of like now ready to go. I'm just going to put it here in the corner and let it sort of sit. So in about a week, I will take a look at it. But every 3 days, I'll simply just go like that, open it up, and I just burped it. So you don't have to make a big fuss out of it. You can just like look at it, say burp, burp, and then that's it. So that's my little lesson on sauerkraut and fermentation. As you can see, it's quite simple. Actually, now since I have all the tools out, I'll just continue on the process just to keep things going and use what I have. But cabbage. There's some great recipes that you can use. Okay, so another question is great. Once it's done, do you then add vinegar and such? So it should already have like a salty, vinegary kind of taste to it. This is where you just kind of add it to whatever meal that you want to add it to. So you can add it to like a salad. You can have it on its own. You can, if you eat meat, you can add to like bratwurst or pastrami. Add it to the various sort of like other dishes. But for the most part, you don't necessarily need to add anything onto it. Now, this is the basic, simple recipe for sauerkraut. There are other variations to it. You can add like caraway seeds. You can add garlic to it. You can add onions. There's other ways in which you could add flavor to your sauerkraut. But just for the basics of how to make a fermented food from home, this is just a really easy, simple recipe. All right. Well, if there's not any more questions, I just want to thank you again for joining us on our YouTube live channel. Obviously, this would be available for anyone who didn't actually miss or made the show. But stay tuned for Wednesday, where we have Gardening with Hope at 1 o'clock. And then on Friday, we'll have Story Time with Sue once again. If you missed on last Friday, it was a great stories around rabbits. Sue is quite the comedian when it comes to jokes around rabbits. It was hilarious. But yeah, so enjoy. I hope that you make some really great fermented foods in this time that you have. Hope you learned something new. And I will see you guys later. Bye.